Good morning, welcome to Herald Now with me, Ryan Bridge. Great to have your company on this Thursday, the 27th of November. Coming up on the show this morning, another OCR cut. What is it going to mean for your mortgage? The Reserve Bank's Chief Economist Paul Conway is live at the desk in 5 minutes. And then after 8:30, the head of the ANZ Bank, Antonia Watson, is live. Why aren't they passing all that through to us? That's the question. Are we inching closer to peace in Ukraine? Trump certainly thinks so. He says we're close, and sending his main man Steve Witkoff off to meet the Russians. International affairs expert, former US ambassador to Poland, Daniel Freed, in 10 minutes. A Kiwi company reckons it's produced a pill that will slash methane from cows by up to 75%. Is this the quickies for cows, and is it going to solve our emissions problems? They definitely reckon. Something to ruminate on this morning, plus defence spending. We'll have the Minister Chris Penk in. All ahead. First, here's Neva.
Herald Now News, powered by News Talk ZB.
The Reserve Bank's Assistant Governor says banks could cut interest rates further if they want to. The central bank's dropped the official cash rate 25 basis points to 2.25% in what may be the last cut of the current cycle. Mortgage rates have been falling significantly, and bank markups have returned to normal levels. While most banks have already priced in current OCR cuts, Karen Silk says they could still offer lower rates if they want to. She says margins are healthy, and banks definitely have room to compete for customers. Northland businesses are taking class action against Transpower and its lines maintenance contractor over widespread power outages. In June last year, a pylon fell in Glorit, north of Helensville, cutting power to almost the entire Northland region. An investigation found a relatively inexperienced and inadequately supervised Omexom worker removed nuts from 3 of the pylon's 4 legs. Law firms Lee Salmon Long and Piper Alderman are leading the opt-out class action against the companies, with backing from Omni Bridgeway. Piper Alderman partner Hannah Brown says that this outage was entirely preventable and those responsible should be held to account. The Herald can reveal a group of survivors of torture at Lake Alice Hospital will receive redress payments ranging between $160,000 and $600,000. Last year, a Royal Commission of Inquiry outlined widespread abuse in state and faith-based institutions over 70 years. A newly released report by independent arbiter Paul Davison KC assesses the accounts of 37 survivors. The group has opted for an independent review of their cases rather than immediate $150,000 payment offered by the government. Davison has allocated redress payments based on the relative severity of the torture they experienced. The government's move to inject billions into Auckland's Devonport Naval Base and other defence infrastructure is expected to boost morale in the force. Deputy Chief of Navy Commodore Carl Woodhead says sailors want to know the nation's as committed to them as they are to it. A number of deaths and injuries are being reported in Hong Kong, where a fire's been burning through multiple high-rise apartment buildings. The complex in the Tai Po district is home to thousands of people, many of them elderly. Oyster farmers working the Mahurangi River north of Auckland have been dealt another blow. Last Wednesday, there was a spill from Warkworth's Elizabeth Street overflow point. It follows the largest spill of the year just 3 weeks ago. Mahurangi Oyster Farmers Association President Lynette Dunn says frequent spills this year have damaged their reputation.
Herald Now Sport, brought to you by Gold Sport.
3-time Swiss Grand Slam singles tennis champion Stan Wawrinka will play next year's ASB Classic for the first time since 2007. South Africa have beaten India by 408 runs on the 5th day of the second cricket test in Guwahati to complete a 2-0 series sweep. Former Black Caps coach John Bracewell believes India is poised to establish global control of T20 franchise leagues in conjunction with the international game because of the entrepreneurs' ability to buy teams as well as players.
It's a massive fire in Hong Kong overnight while we were sleeping. 36 people have died. There are 279 missing. The fire spread across 7 apartment buildings where people were living. 700 firefighters are battling the blaze. About 700 people have also been evacuated at this stage. The fire spread on bamboo scaffolding and construction netting that had been set up outside of the buildings as there's renovation work ongoing. The fire is one of the deadliest in decades in Hong Kong, which is some of the world's most densely populated and tallest apartment blocks. That's some of the bamboo you can see coming down now. Very tall buildings and a lot of people living in them. We will keep you up to speed with this story this morning.
Herald Now weather, brought to you by You Do It Kitchens.
Good morning. A very wet, windy and warm day ahead thanks to a series of fronts moving across the South Island today. Very humid northerlies. Now the heaviest rain is set to continue in the west of the South Island, Westland and the Canterbury headwaters south of Arthur's Pass under an orange heavy rain warning until 1 p.m. An orange strong wind warning remains for the Canterbury High Country and the Plains till 5 p.m. So still some heavy rain around here, but the rain eases back early afternoon. The wind doesn't though, turning west or northwest, not easing till tonight. Wet and windy here, thunderstorms likely too, especially in the west and over the Alps. But from the afternoon, that risk extends out to all of Canterbury and in the north. 30 the high today for some. Mostly cloudy here today with showers turning to rain tonight for Wellington, Kapiti and Taranaki. Could be thundery. It is windy, gusty northerlies for the capital. Hot and dry in the east with northerlies. A heat alert has been issued for Napier. Hastings will warm to 32 degrees. There will be a couple of showers further west. And apart from the odd shower, there will just be cloudy periods for the upper north. Winds are from the north or northwest with a high of 26 degrees for Auckland.
And you're watching Herald Now, just gone 6 minutes after 7. Is the economy finally turning around? Well, the Finance Minister certainly thinks so.
What is the recipe that leads to people feeling better off? It's low inflation, it's low interest rates, it's higher growth. Those are the three things we've been working very hard for as a government, and the Reserve Bank is certainly saying that's what they see ahead of New Zealand.
They certainly do. In their decision yesterday, they cut the official cash rate by 25 basis points down to 2.25%. It's expected to be the last in a succession of cuts. They do leave the door open, though, for a further one next year. It brings the rate to its lowest in 3 years. Paul Conway is the chief economist at the RBNZ, joins me now at the desk. Paul, good morning.
Good morning. Right.
Good to have you here.
Thank you.
You're talking about growth for the coming year ahead and the year after that.
Yep.
What's driving that growth?
Essentially lower interest rates. It's a business cycle upswing driven by consumption from households, investment from businesses, because we've cut the official cash rate. We've cut it from 5.5% mid last year to 2.25 now. So that's a very significant easing in interest rates.
Paul, there'll be people watching this who'll go, yeah, but we've heard this all before. You know, we've had rates cut and we haven't seen growth.
Yeah. I think, the recovery was happening end of 2024 into early 2025, essentially because we were cutting rates then as well. And that got derailed in the middle of this year, essentially because of tariffs and because of global economic policy uncertainty, which is kryptonite for businesses. So definitely in the middle of the year, the New Zealand economy fell into a bit of a hole. We think we're getting through that, and we think the economy is growing reasonably now, actually, in the December quarter of this year, and that'll keep going into next year. But, fingers crossed, things happen. Anything could happen. We can't sort of predict shocks. That's our best estimate of where we're headed.
I want to talk about the growth track and where we were in quarter two in a second, but just following on from that, what should a government be doing at a time like this then, when we're forecasting growth, but there's a lot going on in the world? What should their priority be?
I get in trouble if I comment on government policy. Let's talk about interest rates. I tend to talk about governments in general over the decades rather than the specific government at the moment. And I want to be very clear, what we're predicting now is a business cycle upswing. In terms of structural growth, New Zealand is structurally, we've had our challenges. Productivity growth has been weak for decades in this economy.
30 years we've had.
Well, yeah, exactly. And turning that around is a huge challenge for governments.
We will come to that too. So quarter two, you said, we kind of fell apart quarter two. And we reported at the time, it was backwards 0.9%. Actually, it wasn't that bad. Was it?
Well, the GDP data is a little bit messed up at the moment coming out of COVID, so there are what we call seasonal adjustment issues there. So there's a very high likelihood that that negative 0.9 will get revised up a bit. We were forecasting negative 0.3. For the quarter, so it's still going to be negative. Like, let's not pretend it was fun or anything like that, but the negative 0.9 probably overstates the weakness.
What do you know roughly what it was? What it should have been?
Oh, I would. Well, no,
0.5, 0.4.
0.5,
yeah.
Around there, negative 0.5.
Do you think there's a problem? Because there's the seasonality of there's issues with the numbers.
Yeah.
And we go out as the media and we say, oh, we went back nearly 1%. And people go, oh, shoot, things are worse than I thought. And then it's a self-perpetuating cycle of people then close their wallets. And
Absolutely.
So how do we fix that?
Like, confidence, how people are feeling is really important. And, a lot of that, I was talking about global economic policy uncertainty. People are being precautionary. We've come through a very challenging economic period out the back of COVID, and it doesn't take much for people to go, ugh, I'm just going to sort of, sit on that for a bit. There's been uncertainty in the labour market. Unemployment is up. So it's perfectly rational for businesses to kind of just hold back a bit, consumers, households to hold back a bit. And you're right, we can get into a situation where that sort of excessive precautionary behaviour keeps the economy a bit flatter than it needs to be. And in fact, we cut 50 basis points in October, and part of the idea with that cut was kind of to just help get people through that period of excessive precaution.
A confidence thing. Now, let's talk about the numbers. So for June, we're not quite sure what's being revised, but September you are picking a 0.4% growth, December 0.7% growth. What about next year?
Around that 0.7, 0.8. So that on an annual basis, that's around 2.5% growth. Which is reasonable.
What does that feel like? And what about on a per capita?
Better than this year, that's for sure. Per capita, it's not too bad because population growth isn't that strong at the moment, mainly because migration is weak. A lot of people leaving the country, because our labour market has been weak, especially compared to Australia's. So it will feel significantly different to what we've been through 2025.
Well, there will be a lot of people celebrating you saying those words this morning, Paul. One of the things you spoke about in the press conference yesterday was state sector productivity. And I like the sound of what you were talking about. Can you tell us what needs to happen?
Yeah, the thing about that, a journalist asked a question because administered prices that aren't determined by the market, they've been increasing very strongly this year, sort of circa 8-9%. It's a big chunk of the CPI basket.
This is levies and rates?
Yeah, university fees, rego for your car, and rates. Council rates have been a big part of that as well. And also electricity. There's a part of that is regulated by the Commerce Commission, and that's gone up quite a bit. And if you take that out, headline inflation, overall inflation is pretty much around our target of 2%, midpoint of our 1 to 3% target.
So government fees are basically the cause of the inflation.
Well, you got to be careful with that. If you take everything that went up, you go, yay, we're at target. Our target is headline CPI. And the point I made yesterday, yes, the government has been constraining expenditures, so a lot of government departments don't have as much cash as they used to, and we are seeing government prices going up. But if we could increase productivity in the state sector, then that reduced budget, those constraints wouldn't necessarily lead to higher prices because we would be getting more for less thanks to higher productivity, which is the magic elixir for an economy.
And we've just seen Rachel Reeves, the British Chancellor, announcing their budget just last night. They've got the same problem. They've pulled back their growth forecast because productivity growth is low. Well, there basically is none. How do we solve that problem? And isn't AI meant to help solve this problem?
Yeah, like I'm a techno-optimist. I think AI is incredible. I think it is going to transform economies. But, I think we can be a little passive in New Zealand. As sort of things, get done to us. You have to prepare for something like that. You need workers to have the right skills to adopt AI and adapt it to what they can use it for and what they can create value from. You need management within businesses. Successfully adopting a new technology like that is a huge challenge for a business. A business needs to turn itself inside out and reimagine every aspect of what it does given this new technology. And that's a big challenge. So we can't be passive about it. We can't just kind of sleepwalk into this thing. We have to be alive to it to make the most of it.
We need a strategy, don't we? We need like a proper strategy with some, an army behind it to actually make something like that happen. Otherwise, as you say, we will follow the rest of the world.
That's right. Well, the skills system needs to adapt and be providing skills that are valuable in the labour market. So you do need the whole kind of public sector and the private sector to come together, at least around a bit of a vision of what the future looks like.
Paul, great to have you on the program this morning. Thanks so much for being with me.
Thank you, Ryan.
Paul Conway, Chief Economist at the Reserve Bank. Time is 14 minutes after 7. Don't forget, you can email me this morning, Ryan at nzherald.co.nz. You can also comment in the comment section of our YouTube channel where we're streaming live every morning. Negotiations on the US brokered peace plan between Ukraine and Russia are ramping up, with American officials preparing for more talks in Moscow next week. The European Union's top diplomat, Kaja Kallas, says Russia is not ready for a peace deal despite ongoing negotiations with Trump. She says they need to put more pressure on the Russians.
An immediate and unconditional ceasefire must be the first step to ending the war. But right now we see zero indication that Russia is ready for a ceasefire. Russia is not winding down its military machine, but ramping it up. We still need to get from a situation where Russia pretends to negotiate to a situation where they need to negotiate.
So the Ukrainians say they could accept much of the framework, but the sticking points are the same old ones. Security guarantee, backstop, what does that look like for Ukraine? Then there's the land, a whole bunch of other stuff. Daniel Fried is a former US ambassador to Poland and is now at the Atlantic Council and joins us live this morning. Mr. Ambassador, nice to have you on the program. Welcome.
Morning.
What do you make of these developments that Ukraine's open to the framework? I mean, has anything really happened or changed here?
Well, what's happened is the Trump administration is pushing hard for a deal. They're doing so in a clumsy fashion, but they're right to push. I wish they were doing so better, but they're right to push. The Russians are playing their usual games, trying to game the process while giving absolutely nothing in terms of substance. Kaja Kallas is right. The two issues are what's the ceasefire line and what's security for Ukraine after the ceasefire. On both of those issues, the Russians aren't giving. The Trump administration is going to have to put pressure on the Russians. We have options to do so. And if and when we decide to do that, then there is a chance for negotiations. But the Russians will put that off as long as possible through a series of fake positive gestures, obduracy, threats, the usual twisting and maneuvering they go through. The sooner the Trump administration figures that out, the better for all of us.
Taking them a while, though, isn't it? What sort of pressure are you talking about? You mean more sanctions?
Well, the Trump administration, to its credit, imposed sanctions on the two biggest Russian oil companies. These need to be enforced. We have a number of options to do so. A second thing we could do is work with Europe to provide an assured funding stream for weapons for Ukraine and stop restricting the weapons. Send them what they need. A third thing we could do is to put other kinds of pressure on Russia. The U.S. could be backing up the European-led coalition of the willing, so-called, which is considering options to actually help Ukraine with military forces. We should not be begging the Russians for their permission to help Ukraine. We should be telling the Russians that if they don't settle the war, they're going to suffer worse and worse consequences. That kind of language doesn't cripple negotiations, it enables them.
Ambassador, there's always been this lingering question about why the Trump administration doesn't go harder on Russia, doesn't, as you say, actually enact the sanctions that they announce. What is your theory on that? There's been talk, this was a couple of years ago, that the Trump administration doesn't want a war with everyone. It doesn't want to be fighting. It cannot, fight fires on all fronts. With, China's the real enemy. Let's not piss Russia off too much, basically. What do you think's going on there?
The Trump administration is a collection of mutually antagonistic schools of thought. there are some neo-Reaganites who believe in the free world, and they generally believe in supporting Ukraine. There's the Asia First group that thinks that China is the principal adversary, and everything we do in Europe detracts from what we need to do in the Western Pacific. That's foolish because it's not, these aren't separate or separable issues. There's a third group, which is kind of Fortress North America. They believe we ought to act with toughness against countries like Venezuela. They make noise about seizing Greenland. It's an old Fortress America group. Then there's a group which really wants, it's the right-wing version of the old left-wing come home America, the people who want nothing to do with the world, neo-isolationists. And these groups are all squabbling with each other. You can feel it in Washington. And you see the influence of the different groups in the meandering and contradictory impulses of the Trump administration toward Ukraine. What the president's views are, I can't say, but I suspect he wants, above all else, to win. And he could succeed in forcing a peace in Ukraine to his enormous credit. Real vindication for the president. But to do that, he will have to impose discipline on his own administration and stare down Vladimir Putin. He could do that. I don't know whether he will, but this is possible. This is a solvable problem.
Appreciate your time this morning, Ambassador. Thanks for being with me. Daniel Freed, the former US Ambassador to Poland, now with the Atlantic Council. It's 21 minutes after 7. Coming up next, our ageing defence bases are getting a makeover to the tune of $2.5 billion. It's over 15 years. Is it too little too late? We'll speak to Chris Pink. He's with us. And later, is a pill the answer to cutting our methane emissions from cattle? The company Curbing Cow Burps is with me after 7:30. All ahead.
I'm Hayden Scott, and I'm a knife maker. I make knives from my workshop at home in West Auckland. Yeah, my previous life I was a chef, did that for 25 years. But I had this knife making thing that I was doing and had been doing for some time. And so that transition from finishing that 25-year career and taking the plunge into full-time knife maker, I had been building up to that, but I still had to take a leap.
I'm upgrading Grand's old flip phone. This new model's got an awesome camera, built-in AI, and it still flips.
Oh, flip life forever, baby!
Nobody has supreme knowledge or phone upgrades like Noel Leeming.
Maximising productivity, what have you got?
Well, if we switch to 2 degrees, with Flex for Business, we can instantly manage data usage, employee mobile plans, and cost centre reporting, saving us time and money. Cool. I'll get onto that then.
I became a Herald journalist to go behind the headlines and to help people make sense of the world.
I became a Herald journalist to help people understand the big issues that affect them.
To ask the right questions and to press people who have the answers.
To listen to people and to be fair and balanced.
To highlight the plight of the marginalised and vulnerable and challenge those in authority.
To share extraordinary moments in the lives of ordinary people.
I became a Herald journalist to report the facts. That's what we're here to do.
If it's news you can trust, it's news worth knowing. The New Zealand Herald.
Welcome back, 23 minutes after 7. The government's unveiled one of the biggest defence overhauls in decades, committing $2.5 billion over the next 15 years to keep ageing defence bases operational, basically, baseline. Officials warn many facilities are close to the end of their working life, but the final price tag could reach $4 billion. Chris Pink is the Associate Defence Minister, joins me this morning. Morning, Minister.
Morning, Ryan.
So, about time.
Yeah, about time. Overdue, in fact, over successive governments and certainly decades. There's been an underinvestment in defence infrastructure. That's a problem in terms of now needing to catch up. But in the meantime, it's cost us in terms of operational readiness a little bit, but increasingly that would be the case. The ability to train and also the morale and therefore retention of our people.
When you say there's now a social licence to do this investment, to spend this money, what do you mean? Is that because we are now aware that war could come to the Pacific Theatre once again and therefore we need better facilities?
Yeah, I mean, that's very well summarised. I would say, it's probably always been necessary that we invest, particularly when you think that these are long-run investments. And if we'd started 10 or 20 or 30 years ago, we'd be better placed now as the geopolitical environment requires it, for the reasons you've said. But you don't need to contemplate any kind of full-scale war. It can be some sort of other operations. These are contested spaces, the waters that surround New Zealand, whether it's fisheries protection, freedom of navigation, and then you've got the non-military stuff like search and rescue, humanitarian assistance, disaster relief. Think your floods and other hurricanes, typhoons and other natural disasters in the South Pacific, including a South Pacific nation called New Zealand, by the way.
Minister, because we've left it so long to fix this stuff up and maintain our buildings and facilities, do we run the risk of actually not, you're announcing the money now, but it's going to take a while to do all this work, right? So are we going to be short on facilities? Is there going to be some kind of gap, or are we going to have a space for everything we need to have space for until the work's done?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've got the physical space, but actually, I mean, part of that is being clear about where we need to have our defence spaces. We did have a pretty careful look at whether they're in the right position. For example, whether the naval base should remain in Devonport on the north shore of Auckland. It is the right place for that. So making that decision now means that we can have confidence to spend money upgrading the infrastructure. Of course, what we wouldn't want is for us or a future government in the short term to make a decision to move it after we've poured a lot of money into that location. So we will be okay as long as we get on with it now. And I would say that, efforts have been underway for a few years, and including as recently as this budget, $25 million to start the works that are needed in Devonport.
All right, Minister, appreciate your time this morning. Thanks for being with me. Chris Pink, Associate Defence. It is 26 after 7. A drone has captured footage of a family being rescued from the roof of their house. This is in southern Thailand. With their house mostly underwater after flash flooding, the family smashed through the roof and waited until they were spotted by an emergency crew. All 5 of them were rescued and taken to emergency shelter by boat. A state of emergency has been declared in the region, with flooding cutting off Hat Yai, a city of 200,000 people, where 8-metre floodwaters were recorded. At least 19 people have died in what the Thai Weather Service is calling a once-in-300-year storm. We will have that video for you in just a second. It turns out driver assist systems really do seem to be reducing car crashes. That's according to AMI's new motor report. 70% of motorists with driver assistance reported improved safety, with 12% admitting they wouldn't have the confidence to parallel park without it. Joining us now is David Linklater from Driven, the editor. Good morning, David.
Good morning.
Let's start with the accidents, the crashes. What is the data telling us about the technology that's in the cars and what it's doing to our accidents?
The technology is telling us that the accidents are slowly reducing. The rate of churn in new cars, it takes about a decade for a car fleet to refresh. So this is quite new technology, so it comes through quite slowly. But AMI has identified a 7% reduction in crashes since 2023. And that's good data because it's one of the largest insurer groups, and it's well over 200,000 claims per year that it handles. So it knows its stuff.
And so let's assume that's true. That's fantastic. How do we know it's the cars, not the roads, etc.?
Because these are collisions. So about 60% of those claims are collisions, and that's not just car-to-car accidents, that's minor collisions like hitting a wall, or accidents when you're parallel parking, or wiping a mirror off on someone else's car. I mean, I don't know, how's your parking, Ryan? Is it good?
It's never been great.
You're prone to hitting the odd curb?
Well, actually, I've come into the building here one morning because in my car you have to press a button to make the sound ding, when you get close to the wall.
Okay, yeah.
And one morning I didn't press the button. And this is the problem with technology. Great when it's working, but not so great when it's not. I didn't press the button and I just hit the wall because I was so used and accustomed to the sound.
You get used to it. That's the problem, and that's the problem for people maybe in fleets, or sometimes for us in our job when you're hopping from car to car. All cars are slightly different. You need to be aware of what you got and what you don't have.
True.
But yeah, ADAS, so Advanced Driver Assistance Systems, and that's just basically anything that's camera or sensor based that helps you drive, and that's really the technology they're talking about.
What's been the biggest advancement, do you think, for safety? Is it, well, I mean, obviously the airbag's pretty good, but you know, you've got now, like, if you get out of the lane, it makes a little buzz sound or makes a noise, all sorts of new stuff. What's the kind of, you know, the peak of safety?
Peak of safety, we're still finding a way, I think, because a lot of drivers would tell you, one of the survey results was that I think half of drivers under 40 definitely want lots of ADAS in their car. There's probably lots of drivers over 40, and this is a David fact, not an official fact, would probably say they would like a bit less, because we're still finding a way. A lot of it's quite intrusive. There's always something beeping and bonging at you as you're driving along, but it works, and it works to keep you at the speed limit, because there's driver distraction warnings and speed limit warnings now. Lots of cars have traffic sign recognition, so they can read the speed signs and they'll give you a warning when you go over the speed limit. Not a bad thing. I quite like that.
That's
actually.
quite good.
Yeah. At the very basic level, autonomous emergency braking is something that most new cars have now, and that's just a very simple thing that has a sensor that will stop you hitting somebody else in traffic. If you get too close to another car, or to a wall in your case when you're parking, it'll just automatically apply the brakes and stop you hitting them.
Really?
Yeah.
What if you want to hit them?
You can turn it off. You can always turn them off.
But is that in new cars now on the roads in New Zealand?
Most new cars.
Wow.
So it's not mandated in New Zealand.
I need to upgrade.
In lots of countries it is mandated, and I would say most new cars in New Zealand have at least autonomous emergency braking.
Wow. Okay.
And that's really what's helping reduce a lot of those sort of really low speed, heavy traffic collisions, because it's preventing cars from hitting each other. You know, if you're a bit distracted when you're pulling up to the red light with a car in front of you and you're not paying attention, that will actually prevent you from hitting the car in front.
9 out of 10 of the top crash hotspots are in Auckland or around Auckland. Yeah. Is that just because of the population? What's that about?
I guess it's just population. It's traffic density. I mean, the takeaway is don't drive in Auckland.
Around other people.
Yeah, around other people, yeah. Yeah, that's just, that's population. It's, you know, we have the heaviest traffic, Christchurch got a look in. Morehouse Avenue in Christchurch is one of them, so
interesting.
We haven't forgotten the South Island.
David, appreciate your time this morning. Thanks so much for being with me. That's David Linklater, who's with us from Driven, the editor there. It is 29 minutes away from 8. Here's Neva.
Herald Now News, powered by News Talk ZB.
The Reserve Bank's Assistant Governor says banks could cut interest rates further if they want to. The central bank's dropped the official cash rate 25 basis points to 2.25% in what may be the last cut of the current cycle. Mortgage rates have been falling significantly and bank markups have returned to normal levels. While most banks have already priced in current OCR cuts, Karen Silk says they could still offer lower rates if they want to. She says margins are healthy and banks definitely have room to compete for customers. Northland businesses are taking class action against Transpower and its lines maintenance contractor over widespread power outages. In June last year, a pylon fell in Glorit, north of Helensville, cutting power to almost the entire Northland region. An investigation found a relatively inexperienced and inadequately supervised Omexom worker removed nuts from 3 of the pylon's 4 legs. Law firms Lee Salmon Long and Piper Alderman are leading the opt-out class action against the companies, with backing from Omni Bridgeway. Piper Alderman partner Hannah Brown says that this outage was entirely preventable and those responsible should be held to account. The Herald can reveal a group of survivors of torture at Lake Alice Hospital will receive redress payments ranging between $160,000 and $600,000. Last year, a Royal Commission of Inquiry outlined widespread abuse in state and faith-based institutions over 70 years. A newly released report by independent arbiter Paul Davison KC assesses the accounts of 37 survivors. The group has opted for an independent review of their cases rather than immediate $150,000 payment offered by the government. Davison has allocated redress payments based on the relative severity of the torture they experienced. The government's move to inject billions into Auckland's Devonport Naval Base and other defence infrastructure is expected to boost morale in the force. Deputy Chief of Navy Commodore Carl Woodhead says sailors want to know the nation's as committed to them as they are to it. A number of deaths and injuries are being reported in Hong Kong, where a fire's been burning through multiple high-rise apartment buildings. The complex in the Tai Po district is home to thousands of people, many of them elderly. Oyster farmers working the Mahurangi River north of Auckland have been dealt another blow. Last Wednesday, there was a spill from Warkworth's Elizabeth Street overflow point. It follows the largest spill of the year just 3 weeks ago. Mahurangi Oyster Farmers Association President Lynette Dunn says frequent spills this year have damaged their reputation.
Herald Now Sport, brought to you by Gold Sport.
3-time Swiss Grand Slam singles tennis champion Stan Wawrinka will play next year's ASB Classic for the first time since 2007. South Africa have beaten India by 408 runs on the 5th day of the second cricket test in Guwahati to complete a 2-0 series sweep. Former Black Caps coach John Bracewell believes India is poised to establish global control of T20 franchise leagues in conjunction with the international game because of the entrepreneurs' ability to buy teams as well as players.
25 away from 8, returning to this drone footage that's captured a family being rescued from the roof of their house in southern Thailand. It's incredible pictures with their house mostly underwater after flash flooding there. The family smashes through the roof, waits until they're spotted by an emergency crew, and then all 5 of them are rescued, taken to an emergency shelter by boat, and they're all safe, thank goodness. State of emergency declared in the region. Flooding is cut off Hat Yai, a city of 200,000 people, where 8-metre floodwaters were recorded. At least 19 people have died in what the Thai Weather Service is calling a once-in-300-year storm. Let's check out weather here at home.
Herald Now Weather, brought to you by You Do It Kitchens.
Good morning. A very wet, windy and warm day ahead thanks to a series of fronts moving across the South Island today. Very humid northerlies. Now, the heaviest rain is set to continue in the west of the South Island, Westland and the Canterbury headwaters south of Arthur's Pass under an orange heavy rain warning until 1 p.m. An orange strong wind warning remains for the Canterbury High Country and the Plains till 5 p.m. So still some heavy rain around here, but the rain eases back early afternoon. The wind doesn't though, turning west or northwest, not easing till tonight. Wet and windy here, thunderstorms likely too, especially in the west and over the Alps. But from the afternoon, that risk extends out to all of Canterbury and in the north. 30 the high today for some. Mostly cloudy here today with showers turning to rain tonight for Wellington, Kapiti and Taranaki. Could be thundery. It is windy, gusty northerlies for the capital. Hot and dry in the east with northerlies. A heat alert has been issued for Napier. Hastings will warm to 32 degrees. There will be a couple of showers further west. And apart from the odd shower, there will just be cloudy periods for the upper north. Winds are from the north or northwest with a high of 26 degrees for Auckland.
And if you want to watch Herald Now on YouTube, search at Herald TV and you'll see the live show. All the interviews that you've missed are lined up there for you as well. Nice and easy. Make a point of clicking subscribe while you're there and you'll find us much easier tomorrow. Let's get to business now with our partners, 2 Degrees. We've got a read from the Reserve Bank on the pace of recovery as it cut the OCR to 2.25% yesterday. We've just spoken to the Reserve Bank's chief economist. Now we're joined by Garth Bray from Business Desk. Garth, good morning.
Good morning, Ryan.
Bit of a come down.
Bit of a yeah, well, hey, look, he was interesting. I watched that. It was really interesting.
He was, wasn't he?
Yeah, yeah.
Because the problem is, yes, we're going to get growth, and I don't mean to sound ungrateful, Garth, because we are going to get growth, which is what we want. But it's not like we're, as he talks about, it's not like we're going to take off, and that growth is almost a rebound from where we've been, rather than we will continue that way for 10 years.
Yeah, if you look at that, like the house price growth they're talking about, it's very, very sustainable is the new buzzword. Sustainable basically means bugger all.
Yeah,
you know? It's
exactly.
Like, it's probably music to the ears of the politicians who don't want to see them take off by too much because that'll leave everybody behind. But for those people who are feeling that that's an important part of how they feel wealthy, that's not a huge news.
So for people at home, Garth, you know, it looks like this is the end of the cutting cycle. Is that a fair thing to say?
There were a lot of questions around that yesterday because obviously there's a fair bit of money out there in terms of the mortgage market that's been sort of sitting on floating rates going, gosh, should we jump now? Should we price out longer? I am not qualified to give mortgage broking advice. I would always go and see a professional about that. Might do actually. But the point is, I suppose, that if those rates, if the easing cycle seems to have stopped, and I think the indication now there's about a 20% chance at this stage that there would be a further cut in February 18 when they come back after the summer break under a new governor. And so that suggests that some of the 40% of mortgages that are probably going to roll over in the next couple of months will be fixing at different rates. And Karen Silk, the Reserve Bank Deputy Governor, was saying basically, look, you've got a great opportunity there, that the margins are back where they should be relative to wholesale rates. So banks they're making a healthy gain on that.
Yes.
There's scope, plenty of capacity for a bit of competition. Not a mortgage war, but just a good
healthy dose.
Yeah.
We're speaking to Antonia Watson from Chief Executive at ANZ after 8:30, so we'll ask her about that then.
Yeah.
Now, export prices holding up well. This is what, again, from the Reserve Bank, and we saw that from Fisher & Paykel Healthcare yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they are our Nvidia, if you like, one of our huge market darlings, and they cracked $1 billion in revenue for the first half for the first time, which is a great number. I think, what are we talking about? $213 million worth of net profit after tax. It's above guidance, so their full year guidance is lifted again, largely on currency. We've got a very relatively weak dollar at the moment, although it jumped about 1% yesterday on news that the easing cycle was probably over. So, and interesting, they're not making huge changes based on the tariffs. They've sort of priced that in at about $16 to $17 million worth of impact, and they're just trying to sort of stick to their knitting and continuously improve rather than get too freaked and flaky by changing events.
Now, finally, Air New Zealand bosses having a crack at airports about giving Jetstar some sweetheart deals.
Yeah, look at Nikhil Ravichandran, the new CEO. He's been in there for 5 weeks. I know you spoke to him earlier in the week. I don't know if he dropped this little bomb in there, but he was talking about...
No, we dropped plenty of other bombs, Garth, but this particular one wasn't dropped.
He's obviously picking his audiences, maybe. So this one is aimed at the airports for offering sort of extended or not time-limited discounts to Jetstar, basically, on landing fees and other kinds of deals. And he's saying, that's, it's fine if you're introducing a new player to a new line or a new market or whatever, but to just sort of offer open-ended discounts, that's outrageous. And we're, we're the national airline, but we're all, a commercial airline, but also, part of critical infrastructure, sort of, Air New Zealand CEOs do sometimes wrap themselves in the flag. And I guess the counter to that's come from the Airports Association saying, come on, this is absurd. We're talking about $10 to $20 on the cost of an airfare. That doesn't justify how you have to pay $1,000 for a return here in some cases.
100%.
I guess the point is they are just sort of cherry picking the main 5-6 routes, your Auckland, Wellington, Hamilton, Dunedin, Queenstown, Christchurch, not the regional routes that Air New Zealand has to cover as well. So a bit of an interesting choice to have a crack at that one.
Because you can see how it would feel unfair to Air New Zealand, because they basically have to pay more on the main trunk lines. Because if I fly now and I'm going Auckland, Wellington, I will more often than not fly Jetstar, because I'm a last-minute booker, and it's an $800 versus a $200 decision.
I mean, a big part of this that they can't control is obviously the engine troubles that they've had that have really slammed them, and that limits their ability to sort of offer more.
They're still years away from having those resolved, unfortunately.
So I guess it's have a whack at something you think you might be able to control.
Garth Bray, Business Desk. Thanks, Garth. That's thanks to our partners, 2 Degrees. It's just gone 18 minutes away from 8. And you're watching Herald Now. Coming up next, the Kiwi company that reckons it solved the problem of methane emissions from cattle. Is this finally the solution to cow burps? Then, just before 8, the boys are in to talk sport.
Finally landed south of the equator, ready for some warm family memories.
This Breville is great for holiday gatherings. Care for an iced? Or hot?
Holiday as, bro.
Nobody has supreme knowledge of Christmas gifting like Noel Leeming.
Here she is. How's the business going?
Good, actually. We just switched to 2 Degrees. Well, we tested the networks and couldn't see any difference. But 2 Degrees has the most satisfied customers. With Flex, we get instant control of phone plans, data usage, and cost center reporting. And they're the fastest growing business network.
Can I have what she's having?
Sing your heart out to Coast's feel-good 80s hits. Kenny Loggins. Whitney. John Farnham. Eurythmics. Bonnie Tyler. Eric Carmen. The most 80s are on Coast. Sing your heart out. Coast.
In 1985, my grandfather set out to make the world a better tea.
That's why we grow our own, unlike other tea companies. Then pick the best leaves by hand, not machine, and pack it right here in Sri Lanka. But it's not just the taste that makes our tea better. 15% of our profit goes to humanity and to the elephants. As my grandfather said,
Do try it.
Welcome back. An Auckland startup says it's found a breakthrough. This is a new way to slash methane from cows, a slow-release cow pill that could cut emissions by up to 75%. Ruminant Biotech has just raised $17 million to take the product to market. And Tom Breen is the CEO, joining us now from a conference in Melbourne. Tom, good morning.
Morning, Ryan.
So tell us about the pill.
Yeah, so the last 4 years, we've been working away really hard, developing what's called a bolus. So we've patented and proved out the bolus that's ready now to, or almost ready to go into cattle in New Zealand and Australia early next year. The bolus sits in the animal's stomach and it releases its blend of active ingredient over about 3 to 4 months. And while it's doing that, it's interrupting the microbes that produce methane and reducing the methane output from cattle.
And how many trials or how many animals have been trialled on?
Yeah, we've been going for 4 years now in the development phase, and over 30 animal trials over that time, looking at the performance of the product and the safety profile.
What does it actually do? Can you explain in simple terms how you can stop the methane? I mean, it's still being produced by the cow, right? But you can stop it from being emitted?
No, it actually stops it from being produced. So the active ingredient in the bolus is metabolised by the microbes that are in the rumen that typically produce the methane, and it just interrupts the last step of that. So instead of producing methane, they produce hydrogen and carbon dioxide, and it eliminates the really challenging problem of the methane.
When you say 75%, this number we're throwing around, is that the average of how much methane was prevented from being, from even coming into existence, as you've now told us? Is that sort of an average? Is that, the maximum?
Yeah, we actually say greater than 75% for up to 100 days with our first generation product. So over that period, it's somewhere around that 75 to up to 90%. And it depends on a range of factors around, what's going on with the animal, what it's eating at the time, even some of the climatic impacts have an impact on how much methane is actually produced each day. But yeah, we're confident after 4 years of trials now that the product's going to have a really meaningful impact. And by that, we mean greater than 75% methane is prevented from being produced for up to 100 days.
When you say for up to 100 days, does that mean you take another pill and then keeps going?
Yeah, our first generation product is going to be a one use only. So in New Zealand, it'll be for a beef animal. We'll be able to dose that from when it's around about 350 kilos, once it's reached that size. And we'll treat the animal once, and once that treatment is over, that animal will typically go away and be turned into delicious steaks and sausages and that sort of thing. So in future, we'll have we'll extend the product registration and the product portfolio so that we can have multiple treatments across animals like cows that are they're going to need to be treated multiple times over their lifetime.
All right, Tom. Here's all my dumb questions. If you're stopping them from making methane, does that mean that they create something else? Is there going to be some unintended consequence or byproduct of this process?
That's the great thing about the technology is it's really effective at reducing methane, and it's proven that it's safe for the animals, and it's going to be safe for the environment and safe for the produce as well. So the short answer is no. The methane stops being produced. Hydrogen and carbon dioxide get produced instead. And the animal continues to work away, turning its food into energy and growing the products that we need.
Tom, I'm sorry, this sounds too good to be true. I mean, half of our greenhouse gas emissions come from methane. It's a massive problem, one that, you know, we've got all sorts of legislation that's being proposed, then being cut, etc. You're saying this pill could fix it for 75% of emissions in the first 100 days. It sounds incredible.
Yeah, it is. It's a really great solution. You know, the industry's been working hard now for a long time around bringing solutions to market that can tackle this problem. Addressing methane emissions from livestock in agriculture is really difficult, and the major reason for that is that most of the world's cattle are spending most of their life out on pastures. So it's actually quite challenging to address the problem where it is. So we set out to do that 4 years ago. Our mission was to be able to tackle emissions where the problem was at its worst, which is in pasture grazed cattle. And really pleased with the progress that we've made. And this capital raise is validation of that. And we're just really looking forward now to achieving this last regulatory milestone we've got in New Zealand early next year, and bringing this solution to Australian and New Zealand farmers so they can start to tackle this problem that we need to address.
Yeah, what is that regulatory milestone that you need to get over? What do you have to show?
Yeah, so New Zealand Food Safety is responsible for registering agricultural compounds and vet medicine. So we're going through a regulatory assessment process with them. They look at all the things that you expect to look at: the performance of the product, that it does what it says it would do, the safety profile of it for animals and for consumers and the environment. So we're just in the final stage of that. It's been progressing very well. We're really happy with how it's going and looking forward to achieving that milestone early next year.
Tom, I can't help but notice you have an Australian accent. This is definitely a Kiwi startup, eh? We're not claiming, we're not doing a Pavlova here.
It absolutely is. So I thank you for noticing. It's a little bit hard to leave behind, but hey, look, there's an amazing ecosystem in New Zealand, incredible industry support that's sitting behind this. And I was thrilled when I got to know the business to make the move over the ditch, and working with a great bunch of people and a great bunch of shareholders and a supportive industry in New Zealand. And we're going to take this technology to the world and show genuine Kiwi ingenuity and innovation, and really make it show the world that we can lead in this area.
Brilliant. Tom, go hard. Appreciate your time this morning. Tom Breen, Ruminant Biotech CEO. Time is 9 minutes away from 8. Maybe if you can take the methane out of a cow burp, then maybe you can stop human fart smelling. That's one thing I was wanting to ask about, because I work with a guy called Paul, who just terrible gas in the morning. So that's something that I would hope they'd be able to work on at some stage. 9 minutes away from 8. It's being reported that a relative of White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt has been detained by ICE. Officials have reportedly detained the mother of Leavitt's nephew. ICE agents took the woman into custody in Massachusetts earlier this month. This is according to NBC News. The woman has an arrest on suspicion of assault. A Department of Homeland Security spokesperson says she is a criminal illegal alien from Brazil who overstayed her tourist visa, which expired back in June of 1999. Leavitt has so far declined any requests for comment. The Reserve Bank cut the OCR for the final time this year, 25 basis points to 2.25%. On ZB this morning, I spoke with the Finance Minister, Nicola Willis, and started off by asking, did the economy actually grow this year?
Well, in the first quarter of the year, it grew very strongly at about 0.9%. We had a downturn in the second quarter. The Reserve Bank stated yesterday that they think that was statistically overstated and will be readjusted in a further update. They think that the economy is currently growing and that growth will strengthen into next year.
So how much do you think we grew this calendar year?
Well, it's too early to say that. We will get the data for the third quarter in a couple of weeks, and we'll get the data for the December quarter early next year.
Is it annoying the data is so wrong?
Look, it is difficult that the data lags, and it is the case that Stats NZ data has had to be updated fairly frequently and adjusted. And look, that's the reality of the SATS process. We can't do much about it, but we do get enough other information that we get a sense of where the economy is, and that's allowed the Reserve Bank to be very confident in their forecasts, that we're currently growing, that growth will strengthen next year, and that inflation will be coming down next year.
Which is good, and that sounds great, but we have heard this story before. Our big problem's productivity, isn't it? That is going to be constraining whatever growth we might be getting. And also, we don't have immigration to prop it up.
Well, productivity is an issue, but fundamentally, if you haven't got your inflation down in an economy and you haven't got your interest rates coming down, then those fundamentals mean that you won't get productivity growth. So what we've now got in the New Zealand economy is a situation where inflation is back in target, is set to come back down to the middle of the band. That's great for growth. We've got interest rates at a low rate, which means that you do have more cash pumping through the economy. That's great for growth. And now we are in a position to be building that future productivity growth. And that's where things like replacing the Resource Management Act, getting rid of red tape in the regional council structures, ensuring that we're delivering infrastructure faster, lifting education standards, all of those are about future productivity. And that's why our government is driving those reforms.
They said the Reserve Bank margins for the banks are healthy, room to bring the rates down further. I'm speaking to Antonia Watson later this morning. What's your message to her?
Well, my message to her would be pass it all on. You are a member of the New Zealand economy, and the actions you take have a significant impact on how New Zealanders are able to invest and grow.
Your comments on the regulatory standards bill, was that just on the fly, or are you seriously thinking you might campaign on repealing?
Well, it's just to be clear that National has its own positions on legislation. We don't just adopt Act's positions. As a coalition government, yes, we do support the commitments we've made, which meant that we passed that legislation. There's still a year at least until the next election, and so as good citizens we need to monitor how that legislation operates in practice, whether we think on balance that the pros outweigh the cons, and then the National Party caucus will take a position on whether we support it going into the next election.
What's your personal view?
Well, look, my personal view is that we do need to monitor it to see whether it adds process or whether, in fact, it's advantageous, and I've got an open mind.
It looks like just another layer of bureaucracy, and it doesn't actually do nothing meaningful.
Well, look, the government decided to progress it because fundamentally we do want good regulation, and that's what the intent of the legislation is. We've now got an opportunity over these next few months to see what it adds in practice. We'll be watching it carefully, and then the National Party caucus will discuss that, and we'll take a position going into next year's campaign.
That was Nicola Willis, the Finance Minister, earlier on News Talk ZB. It's 4 minutes away from 8 o'clock now, and the boys are in to talk sport. Cam McMillan is here along with Chris Reeve. Good morning.
Morning.
Good to see you both. Cam, 2 rounds left. This is Formula One. 2 rounds left. Qatar this weekend. Yep. What can we expect?
Well, expect hopefully more from Liam Lawson. Like, he had a great performance in qualifying in Las Vegas. He was in that perfect position, 6 on the grid, and then George Russell kind of just locked up a little bit, and then he ended up, Lawson, crashing effectively out of the race. And you think of it now, McLaren had 2 cars disqualified. If Lawson had just held that 6th place, he probably could have finished 4th in the end. Qatar's not his best place. I think last year he was probably 2nd to last. But yeah, again, this battle with him and Yuki Tsunoda effectively for a seat next year, that's going to be pretty interesting. Tsunoda, I don't even know if he's racing for a spot now. He's been in really bad form. So maybe he knows something. He's not racing for anything, and he just hasn't done anything on the track.
And there's the other guy as well who's in contention. Is
Yeah, Isaac Hadjar, yeah. Which he's been better. Like, I think he's pretty much, you could almost lock him in for the Red Bull seat.
So, lock him in. Okay, locking in Hadjar.
Yeah.
Sorry, Liam.
Sorry, Liam. Yeah.
But yeah, Liam's still definitely in with a good shout. This will be the first time he's driven a Formula One track for the 3rd time, so that should hopefully do something for him. He hasn't, like Cam said, he hasn't gone particularly well in Qatar in the past. He spun out in the sprint race a couple of years ago, and then last year he had a crash pretty early on, which kind of derailed his race. So hopefully he can avoid the other cars on the grid and make something happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, SailGP, this is Abu Dhabi, and this weekend, and are we going to finally get a win?
I hope so. I think it works better for the black foils in Abu Dhabi. They're quite good in the light breeze. So they've had, I think it's 4 Grand Prix in the Middle East so far, and the black foils have won 3 of them. So they go pretty well in the light breeze for whatever reason. And this year it's a little bit different in the sense that the 3 likely teams to make the final, which is the Black Foils, Great Britain and Australia, they've all got different crews, so a little bit of sort of different things going on board, so nothing's sort of certain this time around.
All right. Cam, what's going on with Ronaldo on this biffo?
Yeah, so it pays to be, I guess, the highest paid footballer in the world. Cristiano Ronaldo, World Cup qualifier against Ireland a couple of weeks ago. A decent elbow on an Irish player, on Reeve, I'll try and demonstrate. But got a straight red card, so usually that's a 3-game ban. He now FIFA have decided effectively that he'll only sit out one of those games, which means he'll be free to play at the World Cup. This comes a week after he met with Donald Trump at the White House. Obviously, USA is hosting the World Cup, so it seems like FIFA's doing everything to make sure the star player will be playing at the World Cup. How this could affect New Zealand is that the World Cup draw is next Saturday. So we could be playing Portugal in the opening game for the All Whites. And if this happened to one of our players, they'd be sitting out 3 games,
Totally.
Yeah.
So do we sort of forgive them that? I mean, given that he's such the pulling power?
It's not a surprise, right? No. Like, it's written in the code of conduct that FIFA are allowed to do this, and this is probably the exact reason why, say, Lionel Messi was suspended for 3 games, you drive fans away with a guy like that not playing. So it's the same with Ronaldo.
Happens in State of Origin, doesn't it? You'll get NRL players will suddenly, they'll be available for this week,
Does that not just kind of undermine the whole thing?
It does.
A little bit,
yeah, he can just elbow anyone he wants now.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, if he does it again in, I think it's within the next year.
Then he'll get the ban.
Until that's suspended.
Yeah.
Go on the naughty step. Yeah. Hey, good to see you both this morning. Thank you. That is Cam McMillan and Chris Reeve from the Herald. Time is 8 o'clock on Herald Now. Good morning, welcome to Herald Now with me, Ryan Bridge. Thursday, the 27th of November. Coming up on the show this morning, Antonia Watson, the boss of ANZ, is with us after the Reserve Bank cut the official cash rate by 0.25%. It's expected to be as low as they'll go, so how much lower will the banks go? That's the question. Eden Park's recorded a small profit, but its boss reckons they're in real trouble if they don't get more concerts. Why don't they make money from sport? Eden Park CEO Nick Sautner is next. And Waiheke Island is home to some of the most expensive property in the country. Now a house that's hit the market for the first time in half a century has got interest from some Hollywood celebs. We'll talk to the agent who's selling it. That's coming up shortly. First, here's Neva.
Herald Now News, powered by News Talk ZB.
The Reserve Bank's Assistant Governor says banks could cut interest rates further if they want to. The central bank's dropped the official cash rate 25 basis points to 2.25% in what may be the last cut of the current cycle. Mortgage rates have been falling significantly and bank markups have returned to normal levels. While most banks have already priced in current OCR cuts, Karen Silk says they could still offer lower rates if they want to. She says margins are healthy and banks definitely have room to compete for customers. Northland businesses are taking class action against Transpower and its lines maintenance contractor over widespread power outages. In June last year, a pylon fell in Glorit, north of Helensville, cutting power to almost the entire Northland region. An investigation found a relatively inexperienced and inadequately supervised Omexom worker removed nuts from 3 of the pylon's 4 legs. Law firms Lee Salmon Long and Piper Alderman are leading the opt-out class action against the companies, with backing from Omni Bridgeway. Piper Alderman partner Hannah Brown says that this outage was entirely preventable and those responsible should be held to account. The Herald can reveal a group of survivors of torture at Lake Alice Hospital will receive redress payments ranging between $160,000 and $600,000. Last year, a Royal Commission of Inquiry outlined widespread abuse in state and faith-based institutions over 70 years. A newly released report by independent arbiter Paul Davison KC assesses the accounts of 37 survivors. The group has opted for an independent review of their cases rather than immediate $150,000 payment offered by the government. Davison has allocated redress payments based on the relative severity of the torture they experienced. The government's move to inject billions into Auckland's Devonport Naval Base and other defence infrastructure is expected to boost morale in the force. Deputy Chief of Navy Commodore Carl Woodhead says sailors want to know the nation's as committed to them as they are to it. A number of deaths and injuries are being reported in Hong Kong, where a fire's been burning through multiple high-rise apartment buildings. The complex in the Tai Po district is home to thousands of people, many of them elderly. Oyster farmers working the Mahurangi River north of Auckland have been dealt another blow. Last Wednesday, there was a spill from Warkworth's Elizabeth Street overflow point. It follows the largest spill of the year just 3 weeks ago. Mahurangi Oyster Farmers Association President Lynette Dunn says frequent spills this year have damaged their reputation.
Herald NOW Sport, brought to you by Gold Sport.
Three-time Swiss Grand Slam singles tennis champion Stan Wawrinka will play next year's ASB Classic for the first time since 2007. South Africa have beaten India by 408 runs on the fifth day of the second cricket test in Guwahati to complete a 2-0 series sweep. Former Black Caps coach John Bracewell believes India is poised to establish global control of T20 franchise leagues in conjunction with the international game because of their entrepreneurs' ability to buy teams as well as players.
8:05, returning to our developing story this morning, this massive apartment block fire in Hong Kong. The leader of Hong Kong, John Lee, has described today's apartment fire as a major disaster. Speaking at a press conference, Lee confirmed the fact that at least 36 people have died, 29 are in hospital and 279 remain uncontactable at this point. Flames are still visible in 4 of the 7 affected buildings, with authorities working to contain the blaze. Lee says the cause of the fire is still under investigation, and we'll have more updates for you as they come through this morning. That bamboo you can see there, completely wrapped around the 7 buildings that are currently still on fire, still burning in central Hong Kong right now. There was netting around the sides of it as well. Construction was being undertaken, and that is the reason that this fire has gone up so quickly and been so devastating for so many people there. Let's get to weather here at home.
Herald NOW Weather, brought to you by You Do It Kitchens.
Good morning. A very wet, windy and warm day ahead thanks to a series of fronts moving across the South Island today. Very humid northerlies. Now, the heaviest rain is set to continue in the west of the South Island, Westland and the Canterbury headwaters south of Arthur's Pass under an orange heavy rain warning until 1 p.m. An orange strong wind warning remains for the Canterbury High Country and the Plains till 5 p.m. So still some heavy rain around here, but the rain eases back early afternoon. The wind doesn't though, turning west or northwest, not easing till tonight. Wet and windy here, thunderstorms likely too, especially in the west and over the Alps. But from the afternoon, that risk extends out to all of Canterbury and in the north. 30 the high today for some. Mostly cloudy here today with showers turning to rain tonight for Wellington, Kapiti and Taranaki. Could be thundery. It is windy, gusty northerlies for the capital. Hot and dry in the east with northerlies. A heat alert has been issued for Napier. Hastings will warm to 32 degrees. There will be a couple of showers further west. And apart from the odd shower, there will just be cloudy periods for the upper north. Winds are from the north or northwest with a high of 26 degrees for Auckland.
8:07, you're on Herald. Now, Eden Park is under pressure, once home to mainly rugby and cricket. The stadium now depends on concerts and major events to stay viable. With only a slim profit forecast next year, its CEO warns that without more big shows, the Auckland venue could face extinction. Nick Sautner is with us at the desk. Good morning.
Good morning, Ryan. Thanks for your time.
That all sounds a little bit dramatic.
I know. I think if if every business needs to evolve, and Eden Park is just like any business, that over the last 6 years we've changed our business model, we've introduced concert content, we're a strategic asset for New Zealand and a community asset for Auckland, but we need greater flexibility to be able to hold major events.
So forecasting 4.2 profit this year,
yes,
but then only 145,000 next year,
yep.
Fewer gigs next year than this year. How does that make sense, given how bad this year's been, for the economy, and how much better it's supposed to be next year?
Well, unfortunately, our concert content next year is looking soft. So when we look at the past 12 months, we had 3 sold-out Coldplay shows. We've had also 2 Luke Combs. The year started well for us with 55,000 coming to Metallica, 70% of those attendees from outside of Auckland. Hotels being over 98% occupancy. But the rest of the year is looking soft for us. We know that sports crowds have diminished over the last sort of 10 years, so we need to look at alternate content. Obviously, music content is a priority for us, but when you look, we've got next year the Edinburgh Tattoo, we've got the Jehovah's Witness Convention, but the challenge for us is that our constraints a major deterrent for promoters to come to New Zealand. For us not to be able to hold a concert on a Sunday night or to be restricted to 4 shows in any given month, if an artist wants to come and do a residency, that's just impossible.
But this is getting sorted, isn't it?
Well, hopefully it is, and we welcome Chris Bishop's investigation.
He could be the PM soon. He could just do it.
Well, we've been delighted with both the PM and Chris Bishop's support of major events.
Yeah.
The introduction of the event fund has been a real positive step forward, but that takes time.
Oh, right. So that's the problem. It's not how much there is or anything like that. It's just that it's kind of come too late to be effective for next year.
Yeah, that's right. And when we look to Australia, there's been Oasis, there's been AC/DC, Lady Gaga. So if that event fund had been implemented perhaps 12 months earlier, I think we would have had a much greater chance of having a stronger 26 of content.
That's got to be frustrating.
It is, but 27's looking really positive. But on the flip side, if we're looking at an event like a State of Origin, we can't even have a conversation until we get a consent. So I'm spending money with council to get a consent on an event that we might secure.
Like 15 grand or something?
Oh no, in some instances it can be hundreds of thousands of dollars. So our concert consent cost us millions of dollars. So we need business to be able to do business.
Now, I was listening to an interview with you the other day, I think it was with Heather on ZB, and you mentioned that you used to, was it Melbourne Stadium or Sydney?
Yes.
You were with, and you said the most profitable thing about it was the car park underneath.
Correct.
Does Eden Park need car parks?
I think when we do our redevelopment, the outer oval should have a 2-level car park and ride. Will be 7 minutes to the CBD on the CRL, and that is definitely infrastructure that's needed in the Kingsland precinct. When you look at the upzoning of the area, there's a shortage of car parking. The number one complaint we get from residents is around traffic management car parking. So there's infrastructure needed to enhance our operations.
How many car parks do you reckon you need?
We could easily get 1,500 car parks on the outer oval. That would enable then a footbridge into Kingsland, a master plan for the stadium, and we have that master plan.
And massive profits for Eden Park.
That's exactly right, but it's actually a community asset as well, so that those shops in Kingsland and Dominion Road, have a shortage of parking, would then have that facility available also.
What would you charge? Like if you're going to see a rugby game or you're going to see Lady Gaga, fingers crossed she comes here, what would you pay for a car park?
So if you look in Melbourne, there's an event day rate for CBD parking, and then there's an event day rate. So we don't want to encourage 50,000 people to drive to Eden Park. We've got a CRL infrastructure, but we want to be able to have 1,500 cars that accommodates perhaps a percentage of our mobility and accessibility patrons, but also then
and the rest will be
corporates.
Porsches.
Yeah, that's right, Ryan. You'd be able to drive yours.
No, you're mistaking me with Mike Hosking. So good. So we have the CRL, then we also have some car parks for wealthy people, or those who need the accessibility, as you say, which is good. What was the other thing I was going to ask you about? Oh, yes, the bikes.
Yes.
So, when you go to a concert or an event, and Auckland Council has set up their their bike racks, and they've got like a whole bunch of people with clipboards there, and I don't know if you've noticed, but they're all empty. Do people actually want to bike to a concert?
Well, for us, it's important to offer all demographics the opportunity to come to Eden Park. And what I would say is we do encourage consumption of both food and beverage at concerts. And so for us, we aren't encouraging people to get on bikes or e-bikes or scooters if they've been consuming alcohol, but there is a service provision. You've also got to remember we have 3,000 staff working on event days, and many of those do commute via public transport or via alternate methods. So having that service available is important, but there isn't high uptake at this stage.
Nick, appreciate your time this morning. Good to see you as always. Nick Saltner, Eden Park Chief Executive. Time is 8:13. Right, let's bring you up to speed with what happened overnight. Rachel Reeves, we've been talking about this the last couple of weeks, finally delivers her budget, but bit of a disaster for her. It was leaked, or they're calling it a release error. Anyway, she's sitting there in Parliament, Starmer's talking, she's looking down at her phone, and you can see the moment that she realised the cookie drop, oh no, it's out. So then she has to go ahead with it. Anyway, it all happens. Couple of bits here. This is interesting for us for a couple of reasons, but interesting mostly obviously for the Brits. This UK Labour government now has increased taxes more than any other British government in recent history. Couple of tidbits. Frozen income tax thresholds for longer. That's your bracket creep. We had this here in New Zealand, so more people creep into higher brackets and then they end up paying more tax. That is one way they're getting more revenue. Another way, a new mansion tax for them. What are they doing with that money? Well, in part, the 2-child cap on welfare is gone burger. So have as many babies as you like and you'll get benefits. That's the gist of it. They had a cap. If you had more than 2 children, they stopped your money. The bit that should worry us, though, is the growth track. They're going to grow slower than we thought they were from next year, and same problem that we have, lower productivity, lower growth. Add to that the fact the US consumer confidence just took a punch to the guts in November. The global economy more generally won't grow as fast next year as it did this year. Our farmers' milk price is coming right off the peak. All this stuff matters because we're a small trading nation, as everybody knows, and as the Reserve Bank said yesterday, for us to grow, the world must also be growing. And I must say it's not all bad news. I'm not here to ruin your Thursday morning completely. China, Germany, Japan, they've all just announced in the last couple of weeks massive spending stimulus packages, which should give things a little tickle up, which is what we like. Goldman Sachs reckons China, of course our biggest trading partner, who buys all of our stuff, will grow faster next year than we had initially anticipated. So there is the good, the bad, and hopefully for next year, not the ugly. Time is 8:15 now. A new report from the Maxim Institute says there could be a new way to tackle some of New Zealand's toughest social problems. Instead of the government paying for services that may or may not actually work, this model pays only when real results are proven. Joining us now is Thomas Scrimger, who's a researcher for the Maxim Institute and author of the report. Thomas, good morning.
Good morning, Ryan.
Good to have you on the program. This sounds a little bit like our cow farting pill that we had earlier on the program, like it might be too good to be true. What are you talking about here? How does this work?
So what we're talking about is social impact bonds, essentially a 3-party contract for social services. Government identifies a problem they're looking to solve, and so they decide they want to buy an outcome. They find a service provider, a charity or an NGO who's looking to do an intervention and says, do you think you can solve it? And if the charity says, yes, we think we can, the government says, great, go find yourself some funding, back yourself, and then if you achieve these outcomes we agree on, we pay you out. So it's something we've trialled before. Towards the end of the last national government, Bill English set up some trials. One ran through to completion with Genesis Youth Trust, and it was really successful. So it's certainly something that has been done.
So who funds it then?
So it's a range of possible opportunity, people looking to do it. There are a bunch of big sort of impact investment funds, people looking primarily to achieve an impact. But the Genesis Youth Trust one, including New Zealand Super Fund. So there's a lot of investors who are looking to make a difference and also make a return, and so there's capital out there.
But there must be a few failures for every success. So how much of a realistic, viable business opportunity is it for people?
So that's a really good question to ask, and I think it's worth looking back to the trials. So National tried to set up 2 trials previously. So the Genesis Youth Trust ran to completion, and it was a big success. But one failed to get off the ground in the first place. They spent $1.5 million on a bond that didn't even get off the ground. So what we just need to do is attribute the costs of everything against the benefits. And what we see is that even if you attribute the costs of the failed bond to the successful one, we actually are still in the positive anyway. So it's certainly viable.
Right. Because we're about to have Dave Detelli on our panel this morning. I imagine he'll have a few things to say about this. So you're saying for someone like Dave, you were saying go out there and get money from somewhere and then show it. I mean, the thing is, he's already proven that what he's doing is working and he's not getting money. So well, I mean, he's getting some, obviously, but he's not getting as much as he would like. So how does this solve the problem?
Well, I think that's a perfect example, right? Dave Latale's coming on. He does great work. And in many ways, organisations like Dave's and many others around the country do work that government agencies can't. So how is it that we empower those people in the community who know their community to do the work rather than leaving it to Wellington? So basically, Dave's got a high profile. He could say, look, we've got this intervention. These are the outcomes we're going to achieve. He can raise support if the government doesn't believe in him already. And so then he can get in there, do the work and do what he does best.
Yeah, and he gets donations, he gets some corporate donations as well. But what else is he meant to do? Go to the super fund and say...
No. So there's a whole bunch of impact investing organisations in New Zealand. And when we're talking about the scale of impact investing in New Zealand, we're talking about billions, not millions. So it's quite a large thing, and it's much bigger than it was, say, 10 years ago when these were first being trialled. So impact investing New Zealand, there are these networks of people, funds specifically, many charities that were established over 100 years ago, develop assets over a century. And so they're looking to hold on to those assets because they're doing their own work, but they also want to invest them to make sure their capital is growing. So they can get their assets doing two bits of work. They can support their own from their return, but also do good while they invest it.
All right, interesting. We'll see what Dave's verdict is when he comes on in just a second. Thomas, good to have you on the program this morning. Thank you. Thomas Scrimshaw, the Maxim Institute researcher. Time is 19 minutes after 8. We'll take a quick break. Don't forget, after 8:30, Antonio Watson, the boss of ANZ, is with us live. Next, it's the panel.
I'm Hayden Scott, and I'm a knife maker. I make knives from my workshop at home in West Auckland. Yeah, my previous life, I was a chef. Did that for 25 years. But I had this knife making thing that I was doing and had been doing for some time. And so that transition from finishing that 25-year career and taking the plunge into full-time knife maker, I had been building up to that, but I still had to take a leap.
I'm upgrading Grand's old flip phone. This new model's got an awesome camera, built-in AI, and it still flips.
Oh, flip life forever, baby!
Nobody has supreme knowledge or phone upgrades like Noel Leeming.
Maximising productivity, what have you got?
Well, if we switch to 2 degrees, with Flex for Business, we can instantly manage data usage, employee mobile plans, and cost centre reporting, saving us time and money. Cool. I'll get onto that then.
I became a Herald journalist to go behind the headlines and to help people make sense of the world.
I became a Herald journalist to help people understand the big issues that affect them.
To ask the right questions and to press people who have the answers.
To listen to people and to be fair and balanced.
To highlight the plight of the marginalised and vulnerable and challenge those in authority.
To share extraordinary moments in the lives of ordinary people.
I became a Herald journalist to report the facts. That's what we're here to do.
If it's news you can trust, it's news worth knowing. The New Zealand Herald.
Get to our panel in a second. Welcome back, 21 after 8. Almost half of Kiwi businesses don't have a website. New research out by Internet NZ found the number is even lower for sole traders, just 1 in 4, with more than half of consumers surveyed viewing websites as important for online sales. Why aren't Kiwi businesses using them? Tim Johnson is Internet NZ Customer and Product General Manager, joining us at the desk this morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Tim, is this just because they're on social media rather than an actual, old school website?
Yeah, I think that's part of the problem in terms of, people think that getting on social media, it's the results are very tangible. You can see your likes, you can see your followers very quickly. Doesn't necessarily translate into good business, but that feels good. You get that those likes. I think one of the more interesting parts of that statistic is that about 63% of businesses see websites as being very important to the success of their own business, but only 47% have them.
Why? Cost?
I think there's, that lagging messaging out there that it's high cost to get into, it's high cost to maintain, it's difficult, you've got to be constantly adding new content, but this is not 2010, we've moved on. For a cost of a cup of coffee a week, you can get yourself a website set up. You know, it doesn't need to be enormous. It just needs to be enough to meet the needs of your customer.
And half of consumers think that it's important to have one.
Half of consumers are on websites looking to research your product, your service, as to whether they're going to purchase from you. 80% of consumers are on websites to buy. So if you're not part of that ecosystem, you're missing out on a pretty big opportunity.
Okay. Why is Internet NZ interested in this? Is it like, do you care, like, do you have a vested interest here in everyone having a website, or does it matter whether they're all on social media? It's still the internet? I don't know. I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, the internet community is, you know, what we're about. So we think having your domain name is a core thing that we do. So we operate the .nz domain name. So anything ending in .nz is what we run. And we think that domain names are the best way for businesses and consumers in a way to control your online presence. Whereas if you're giving yourself to social media, you don't get to control your asset. Your followers are not yours. They belong to the platform. So we think in the interest of the internet community, having your domain name and your website and your own email gives you more control.
So you have the .nz.co.nz as your thing, your baby?
Yeah, anything ending in .nz is our baby. Yeah.
Okay, and does that make lots of money?
It makes us enough in order to maintain our infrastructure and to serve our internet community. We're a non-profit, so we're not interested in paying out shareholders. We're interested in making sure that we don't come up on the news one day because .nz has an outage. You know, that's our core reason for getting up out of bed, and then to serve our internet community.
Interesting stuff. Tim, thanks so much for coming in this morning.
Thank you.
Great to have you here. That's from Internet NZ, Tim Johnson. Time is 8:24 and you're watching Herald Now this morning. Great to have your company. Now, I've got a minerals update for you, a critical minerals update. The update is not critical, I'm talking about critical minerals. And they're the hot thing at the moment. They're like starting wars, they're ending wars, literally. Critical minerals, they're that important to us at the moment. Put them in your phones, put them in your EVs, put them wherever you want, frankly. But in New Zealand, a place called Barrytown on the west coast has some of these very rare, precious, critical minerals. And there's a company called Tyco, which is planning to list on the NZX next year. Critical minerals, they've found some, and what they're going to do, I found this absolutely fascinating. They are mining, the plan is at least, to mine a strip of farmland to a depth of several metres to create a mineral-rich sludge, which they will then process. They then claim that they will be able to turn that land, the mine, back into pasture, back into farmland, and they will make it better and more productive for farming than when they started. That's the plan. Anyway, they're hoping to list on the NZX next year. 24 after 8 now. Let's go to our panel of the day with the big stories. Dave Latelli is here, BBM Motivation founder, and Chelsea Daniels from the front page. Good morning.
Morning.
Good to see you both.
You too.
Dave, what did you think of our guest just before talking about the bonds for charities, stuff like that? What did you make of it?
I mean, it sounds good. I have heard of it before, and you know, so I hit him up as soon as he jumped off. I said, I want to catch up with you guys and direct me exactly where I need to go. But like you said, I mean, what I worry about, I mean, we have all this already. You know, with Building English Impact Lab, we have the highest ever recorded Impact Lab return of $13 for every $1 invested in us. So. And we're still not getting the support. This is on our health programs. You know, we get no funding for our from the couch health program. So what I worry about is if we get this funding to prove it works, which we're already proved it works anyway, it's still really like a popularity contest and a personality thing with the government. See, the problem, Ryan, that I have is that I'm very outspoken on things, and any government of the day. I mean, I have a very special skill. I piss all governments off. You know, so
you do not discriminate.
Yeah, so that's the hard thing. You know, if it still comes down to them. So I think like a lot of the times I don't go to meetings with any of these sort of bureaucrats because I'll cost us funding. So, yeah.
But at the same time, Dave, and hello, Chelsea. Sorry,
go for it.
At the same time, like with same thing with Mike King. You know, he's a big personality too. You kind of need big personalities to get these things off the ground and to get them noticed in the first place.
100%. I mean, we're lucky we have a profile that we've been worked really hard for. And I always think there's no point in having a profile if you don't use it to advocate for those who people just don't hear. You know, so I mean, I'm hopeful. I'm going to catch up with. He just said his boss is Tim Wilson, who I know Tim's good guy. So I've already messaged him as well.
Oh,
and,
nice.
I want to get straight onto this because, I mean, I've heard it works, and we do this on the smell of an oily rag. We have these amazing results where we're reversing type 2 diabetes, thousands, tons of weight lost. Just imagine what we could do with a little bit more.
Yeah, totally. Chelsea, let's talk about the cars and the crash data. So apparently the crash rate, or this is from AMI, the number of crashes reduced by 7% since 2023, all because we've got nicer cars with better safety features. What are you rolling around in? And do you have like one of those fancy bells and whistles on your car?
Absolutely not. My radio was stuck on ZB because it was stuck on volume, and I smashed it, and now all I get is ZB in my car or old school CDs.
What did Mike say? Why did you smash it?
I know. The volume was stuck. No, I was actually listening to Ryan.
That's even worse.
So I have nothing. There's suspicious noises coming from places in my car. So that gives you an indication of what I'm rolling around in.
Right, okay.
And I'm actually quite a good driver. I can parallel park. I can say, yes, it might take me 4 or 5 turns, but I can do it without hitting anything. And I've never been, touch wood, in a car crash
That's
before.
not wood.
Yeah, touch wood.
Yeah,
touch wood.
Your head. Dave, do you have one of those? Because apparently there's one, the cars brake. I didn't know this until this morning. I don't know if I'm stupid, but they brake automatically if it detects that you're going to hit something.
Okay, that would give me a heart attack.
Same.
Even in my Hyundai van, if you're backing out and if the car's coming, it'll just stop if you keep going.
Oh, really?
But story on parking, I was at the Lynmore car park, and Trust Motors, who I'm ambassador for, Trust Motors, how car buying should be, they let me drive a Lambo. Right?
Did they?
They let you do
a Urus, and I parked it up.
That's not great PR for a charity box,
by
the way.
No, they let me drive it. Let me drive. I turned up to a funding meeting in it. No one did get it, but but anyway, I parked it up, and this person was trying to park their car next to me, and thank God I hung around because I said, "Stop!" I had to tell her, or tell the person, sorry, please reverse and back, and basically had to park it for her.
Oh,
so this was an older car that had no sensors. And then once she parked, I had to say, now when you leave, don't turn your steering wheel, just go straight back out.
Yeah.
Because I was very worried about that car.
Oh my goodness,
You parked a Lambo at Lynmore?
Yeah, well, I wanted my...
How much do you get paid? What's your insurance like?
It wasn't my car. It was Trust letting me drive this car. Okay, I had to go for my Asahi before my facial.
No wonder you're not getting any money.
all free, I say. They look after me over at Turk's Barbershop.
Oh my God! Where do I get these deals?
It's terrible. Hey, Chelsea, let's come back to you for a second. Did you see our interview with the company? It's a Kiwi startup, and they reckon they've got a pill that you can give to a cow, and it will stop them producing methane by at least 75%. For the first 100 days. I mean, obviously it's a big issue for New Zealand, and it sounds like this would be a breakthrough.
Yeah, absolutely. Why not? I mean, everything else that we're doing at the moment isn't working, and other countries overseas are being a lot more thinking outside of the box, a lot more than us. We're still rattling on about buying carbon credits and electric bikeways and stuff. That's just lower level, chatting. This is high level, and I reckon it's a great idea. Chuck some money into it, and why not give it a go?
Yeah, I agree. And they reckon they've got some regulatory hurdles they need to jump over, but could be up and running next year. It just sounds like a little bit of a miracle, a little Kiwi startup miracle story here, Dave.
Yeah, and maybe they could also make heaps of money and have it for humans.
I was thinking that.
Yeah, were you?
Imagine if they could make your farts not smell. That's all I thought about.
What, yours do? Mine's like roses. What are you talking about?
Good to see you both this morning, guys. Thanks for coming in. That is the founder of BBM Motivation, Dave Latelli, and Chelsea Daniels from The Front Page. We'll have Antonia Watson, the boss of ANZ, here after news. First, Tez Neva.
Herald NOW News, powered by News Talk ZB.
The Reserve Bank's Assistant Governor says banks could cut interest rates further if they want to. The central banks dropped the official cash rate 25 basis points to 2.25% in what may be the last cut of the current cycle. Mortgage rates have been falling significantly, and bank markups have returned to normal levels. While most banks have already priced in current OCR cuts, Karen Silk says they could still offer lower rates if they want to. She says margins are healthy, and banks definitely have room to compete for customers. Northland businesses are taking class action against Transpower and its lines maintenance contractor over widespread power outages. In June last year, a pylon fell in Glorit, north of Helensville, cutting power to almost the entire Northland region. An investigation found a relatively inexperienced and inadequately supervised Omexom worker removed nuts from 3 of the pylon's 4 legs. Law firms Lee Salmon Long and Piper Alderman are leading the opt-out class action against the companies, with backing from Omni Bridgeway. Piper Alderman partner Hannah Brown says that this outage was entirely preventable and those responsible should be held to account. The Herald can reveal a group of survivors of torture at Lake Alice Hospital will receive redress payments ranging between $160,000 and $600,000. Last year, a Royal Commission of Inquiry outlined widespread abuse in state and faith-based institutions over 70 years. A newly released report by independent arbiter Paul Davison KC assesses the accounts of 37 survivors. The group has opted for an independent review of their cases rather than immediate $150,000 payment offered by the government. Davison has allocated redress payments based on the relative severity of the torture they experienced. The government's move to inject billions into Auckland's Devonport Naval Base and other defence infrastructure is expected to boost morale in the force. Deputy Chief of Navy Commodore Carl Woodhead says sailors want to know the nation's as committed to them as they are to it. A number of deaths and injuries are being reported in Hong Kong, where a fire has been burning through multiple high-rise apartment buildings. The complex in the Tai Po district is home to thousands of people, many of them elderly. Oyster farmers working the Mahurangi River north of Auckland have been dealt another blow. Last Wednesday, there was a spill from Warkworth's Elizabeth Street overflow point. It follows the largest spill of the year just 3 weeks ago. Mahurangi Oyster Farmers Association President Lynette Dunn says frequent spills this year have damaged their reputation.
Herald Now weather, brought to you by You Do It Kitchens.
Good morning. A very wet, windy and warm day ahead thanks to a series of fronts moving across the South Island today. Very humid northerlies. Now the heaviest rain is set to continue in the west of the South Island, Westland and the Canterbury headwaters south of Arthur's Pass under an orange heavy rain warning until 1 p.m. An orange strong wind warning remains for the Canterbury High Country and the Plains till 5 p.m. So still some heavy rain around here, but the rain eases back early afternoon. The wind doesn't though, turning west or northwest, not easing till tonight. Wet and windy here, thunderstorms likely too, especially in the west and over the Alps. But from the afternoon, that risk extends out to all of Canterbury and in the north. 30 the high today for some. Mostly cloudy here today with showers turning to rain tonight for Wellington, Kapiti and Taranaki. Could be thundery. It is windy, gusty northerlies for the capital. Hot and dry in the east with northerlies. A heat alert has been issued for Napier. Hastings will warm to 32 degrees. There will be a couple of showers further west. And apart from the odd shower, there will just be cloudy periods for the upper north. Winds are from the north or northwest with a high of 26 degrees for Auckland.
24 to 9, great to have your company this morning. Time to talk property thanks to our partners GJ Gardner. Once a Cold War bolt hole, this glamorous Waiheke Island estate is back on the market after 45 years and it's drawn the eye of some Hollywood superstars. Caleb Patterson is agent and Patterson Luxury Director, joining us at the desk this morning. Caleb, good morning.
Good morning.
Good to see you. So tell us about this property.
Yeah, so look, it's got a really long history. It was owned by the O'Brien family in the 1800s. They built the old Cowrie Villa there in 1896 as a wedding gift to their son. And then from there, it was passed through different families. The Rothschild family ended up purchasing it in 1963.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was at a time of global unrest with the Cold War. They looked internationally at all the different spaces that could be a safe haven and offer privacy, and this is where they chose to purchase.
It's true though, isn't it? And when or if, I suppose I should say, nuclear war happens, New Zealand is actually quite a good place to be.
Exactly.
So it's 45 years since it's been on the market. What sort of condition is it in?
So the lovely family that purchased it in 1981, they actually were honeymooning in the bay in 1950s when a storm came. They actually sought refuge in the Carry Villa. The family welcomed them on, and they came back quite a few years later to actually purchase it. So since John and Eve Bollard purchased the property, they restored the Carry Villa. They added a 2-hectare organic vineyard. That's won some key awards recently, internationally. And then they've also just loved raising their family and having it as a stunning estate for their legacy.
And now that, I mean, we had the Reserve Bank playing ball yesterday with interest rates, didn't we? And we've got Antonia Watson here next from ANZ. She's going to drop the rates even further for us in just a second. So this will be easy to get, surely.
Look, I think the main thing I'm looking forward to is the government organising the international investor visa category. I think that's going to have a big impact on that kind of luxury market in the months to come.
What interest have you had?
A lot. Surprisingly more locally, with wealthy families locally, a lot through Australia, and then also America has been a big impact of inquiry.
Come on, tell us what celebs are interested.
I would wish I could break an NDA, but from a Hollywood NDA, I'm not keen to test that theory.
So you have actually had to sign NDAs?
I've signed 2 NDAs.
From Hollywood?
Correct.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Are they actors?
They are in that industry, yes.
Okay, all right.
Hence Hollywood.
And yeah, well, they could have been musicians, you know.
True.
Okay, and so the investor category, the visa you're talking about, what is the timeline on that? What is the latest you've been told about when that's all going to kick off?
So there's an article on the 15th of November stating that it might be March, April. This has obviously been campaigned upon and handbrakes have been pulled.
Yes.
A lot of times we had Winston outlining it should go through before the end of the year. So look, we're looking forward to this adjustment coming through. I was in Queenstown 2 days ago, Auckland on Friday with different American families looking at investing through that pathway. And it was really refreshing, you know, hearing, as I'm driving through the country, hearing them say how amazing our country is. And it was a nice reality check for me.
Most important thing, of course, is the price. I think the record at the moment, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, for residential sale prices north of $23 million on Waiheke. What are you expecting here?
Look, when it's one of one, it's an expression of interest, so we're really interested and open to hearing the market's feedback. It's been a long journey for the family to bring it to the market. You know, it's been in this family for 45 years, so we've got a vendor who's open to hearing the market, and my job's to show them that through the strategy.
You're typical, not giving us any idea of a price. Caleb, appreciate you coming on this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Caleb Patterson, agent and Patterson Luxury Director. That's thanks to our partners, GJ Gardner. Time is 20 away from 9. So the official cash rate was lowered yesterday, but when will the banks lower their mortgage interest rates? Well, some of them already have, to be fair. The ANZ CEO, Antonia Watson, is next.
Finally landed south of the equator, ready for some warm family memories.
This Breville is great for holiday gatherings. Care for an iced? Or hot?
Holiday airs, bro.
Nobody has supreme knowledge of Christmas gifting like Noel Leeming.
Here she is. How's the business going?
Good, actually. We just switched to 2 degrees. Well, we tested the networks and couldn't see any difference. But 2 degrees has the most satisfied customers. With Flex, we get instant control of phone plans, data usage, and cost center reporting. And they're the fastest growing business network.
Can I have what she's having?
Sing your heart out to Coast's feel-good 80s hits. Kenny Loggins. Whitney. John Farnham. Eurythmics. Bonnie Tyler. Eric Carmen. The most 80s are on Coast. Sing your heart out. Coast.
In 1985, my grandfather set out to make the world a better tea. That's why we grow our own, unlike other tea companies. Then pick the best leaves by hand, not machine, and pack it right here in Sri Lanka. But it's not just the taste that makes our tea better. 15% of our profit goes to humanity and to the elephants. As my grandfather said,
do try it.
Welcome back. It is 17 minutes away from 9. Earlier on the show, we heard from the Reserve Bank after it cut the official cash rate to the lowest level in 3 years. Banks have already started to react with some interest rates being cut already. Joining me now is the head of one of those banks, Antonia Watson, Chief Executive at ANZ. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to have you here. So why, first of all, you have dropped 20 basis points. Why only on floating, not on fixed?
So the fixed home loan looks at the forward interest rate curve, technical term. So all the expected price cuts in the OCR tend to already be baked into the fixed rates, and you can see our fixed rates already mostly begin with a 4. I think 50% of our customers are on a rate that begin with a 4 now.
And so, given that this is expected to be the end of the cycle, we probably won't see those fixed rates coming any lower.
Yeah, it's hard to know, but certainly the experience with our customer base at the moment is that they're starting to fix for longer. So I think people are picking that we're pretty much at the bottom of the cycle, and the Reserve Bank indicated that yesterday.
Okay, so in a couple of weeks, you're not going to come out with some special rate?
Oh, look, I can't talk about future pricing, but you never know.
So you're cutting 20 basis points, Westpac is cutting 20 basis points, ASB cutting 20 basis points, Co-op comes out and cuts 31. Why can they do that and you can't?
It's a competitive market. We make our own decisions based on, what our balance sheet looks like, what we need. One of the important considerations that came into our decision is that we didn't want to cut our deposit rates as much as 25 basis points, because we want people to want to deposit money with us so that we can lend that to the home borrowers and the business borrowers.
So are we subsidising the savings?
Not necessarily.
As mortgage holders?
No. So it's just a careful balance across both sides of our balance sheets so that we can encourage deposits and make sure that we can fund that home lending and business lending.
What do you say to those who will argue, and Co-op and others economists have, that because you're a big rich Aussie-owned bank, you hold a big chunk of the market, switching is complicated for people, that you can get away with bloody murder? Co-op has to come out with 31, you can get away with 20.
So switching is not complicated, and I guess the proof in the pudding that at the moment, in an average month, every mortgage that's coming up for refixing or a new lending is switching. 25% of those home loans are switching banks. So it's not that hard, and we're absolutely seeing that in the market, and that's one of the signs of a competitive market.
That claim has been contested somewhat by Shamabel Jacob and others, who say that it's a misleading number that you're using, that the real number is more like 7%.
I don't know how they calculated that, but I think they might have thought that I was saying that 25% of all home loans are switching every month. And that would just be almost inconceivable. Imagine the work for the lawyers and people if every single person, 25% of people every month switch their home loan. So I think that might be what they're saying, but what I'm talking about is home loans that are in the market on the average month, 25% of them are switching.
You don't think it's too complicated for people? Like, people put it in the too hard basket of trying to switch banks.
Well, if I'm in the market to refix or get a new home loan, and 25% of the time I'm fixing, it can't be complicated.
All right. What about the percentage? Because the OCR is only one of the factors that goes into setting the rates. What proportion of it, they set the OCR, what proportion of what you charge is sort of factors in the OCR?
It's not a pure mathematical equation, so there's a lot of things that go into the cost of borrowing. One is our cost of capital. We've got $20 billion that we bring in from New Zealand investors and offshore that we invest in our bank. One is the cost of our overseas borrowing. We don't have enough deposits in New Zealand to cover all our borrowing, so we need to borrow from offshore. One is the OCR rate. That tends to have more of an immediate impact on floating rates, which is what you've seen in the last 24 hours. And one is what economists and experts are looking towards the future and saying, what do we think interest rates are doing in the future?
Given the state that the economy is currently in, and you know as well as the rest of us, should they have gone for a bigger cut?
I think what we're seeing at the moment is a lot of green shoots. And so I think that the commentary yesterday was saying, the likelihood is that we're at the bottom of the cycle. They weren't saying no more cuts, but they were saying the likelihood is that we're at the bottom of the cycle. You talk to Port of Auckland and you see the increase in exports that we're seeing. You see differences in our balance of payments. You're seeing a little bit more spend. Our card spend data is going up across most categories a little bit. All of those are little positive signs. I think the missing piece is sort of the confidence, is that it still feels a little bit ugly out there. And as some of those green shoots start to appear, it'll be interesting to see how the Christmas period in retail and hospitality comes out. But as those green shoots start to appear, hopefully confidence will build. People will be happy to go out, take out some lending, buy a house, invest in their business, whatever they want to do with it.
Do you think the Reserve Bank's been too slow with cutting in the last year? I mean, it was August last year we started the cutting cycle, and we're still not really out of the starting blocks in terms of a recovery. I'm an accountant, not an economist, so I won't comment on that, but it's very easy to hindsight things, and I think that, you know, they were amongst the first in the world. Do you feel guilty for having such a big profit?
No, I don't. And I think what Kiwis don't understand, and look, I understand that, it is a very, very big dollar number, but we're a very, very big organisation. We have over $200 billion on our balance sheet. That's about $160 billion of lending. So in that context, $2.5 billion, well, it's a very large number, and I completely acknowledge
it's massive.
that.
People think, whoa, these guys are ripping us off.
Of course, yeah, and I understand that. And the thing to look at is what is our return on the capital that we invest. So we provide our investors a modestly above cost of capital return. Cost of capital is the minimum that an investor would want to receive to bother investing in us. So we want to encourage that investment. We need that $20 billion to come to New Zealand, or else we couldn't lend the money that we lend.
Antonia, nice to have you on the program this morning. Thanks so much for being with me.
Thank you.
It's Antonia Watson, who's Chief Executive at ANZ. Time is 11 away from 9. Next, Rotorua's stinky weed problem. We'll get to the bottom of that. Then Garth is here with Business Desk, thanks to our partners 2 Degrees.
You Do It DIY can make your new dream kitchen a reality. As a trusted Kiwi manufacturer for 44 years, You Do It has made it easy to design, order and assemble your own dream kitchen, offering a range of colour options and flexible sizing. With excellent online support, our customers all agree that You Do It makes DIY easy, delivering superb quality at a great price. Get your project started today at newsroom.co.nz.
We have completed 4 builds with GJ. Every time we want to think of building, we always go back to GJ.
It's a really good experience throughout the whole process.
They deliver what they promise on, and it feels like working with a family member. It's very easy and trustworthy to work with GJ.
Stop paying the waiting tax. The money you could miss out on by delaying the start of your investment journey. Up your tempo with Tempo, the guided investment app that helps you get started. Don't delay because you don't think you have enough time, money, or know-how. All you need is a goal, and our guidance will help with the rest. Plus, this month, get a guaranteed $10 Kickstarter and the chance to win $1,000. Download Tempo now.
Luke Combs, Morgan Wallen, Kaylee Bell, Jelly Roll, Megan Moroney, Chris Stapleton. All the country stars have come to play on the all-new iHeart Country NZ. Your new home for country is iHeart Country NZ.
Welcome back. There's a putrid pong over Rotorua, and it's not the usual sulphur smell. Rotting lake weed has been stinking out the lakefront, with businesses claiming it's so bad that customers are staying away. Matthew Nash is local democracy reporter with us this morning. Hey, Matthew. So what? I mean, obviously we can't. It's not smell-o-vision. What's it like?
Pretty bad. I mean, our offices are just a stone's throw away from where the weed has come up, and yeah, it's sort of floating all down Fenton Street, one of the main streets here in Rotorua, and yeah, it's talk of the town, you could say.
Really? So because there's the usual smell when you go to Rotorua and you go, ugh. This is like an added layer, is it? A different smell, but an added layer.
Yeah, I think that smell of Rotorua is embraced by the locals. This is a little less popular. It's definitely a more potent smell, probably not as certainly not as used to. It's definitely not a kind one on the census.
And what's the situation with the cleanup?
It's ongoing. I mean, they've had some difficulty with the weather last week. We had a pretty poor day where they had to stop for a day, but they're hoping to have it all done by the end of this week. at which point the smell should hopefully start to dissipate a little bit. In fact, it's starting to, but it's still pretty bad out there.
It looks terrible. Why is it there?
Well, underneath the lake, there's this bed of lake weed, invasive weed. It's actually bigger than the CBD itself. It's about 300 hectares. And when there's a bad storm, it just gets tossed up onto the surface. And then once it washes aboard and you get this hot weather that we've had recently, it's just a recipe for disaster when it comes to the stench that comes along. It depletes the water of the oxygen as well, which is causing some of the dead fish, which isn't exactly helping the smell either.
So what is the council going to do more about it? Are they going to invest more in weed control, that kind of thing?
Well, it's quite a layered system. So the lake bed itself is owned by the Te Arawa Lakes Trust, and then the LINZ are in charge of dealing with the lake weed, and then once it's on top of the water, it's the regional council's responsibility, and then once it's on the land, it's the Lakes Council's responsibility. So trying to figure out the bureaucracy of it is a little bit complicated, but the councils are certainly working around the clock, I think, to try and get it cleaned up. There's a lot of tourists walking around with their pegs on their noses, I think, if they could.
Have they got a timeline yet? One of these agencies to fix it, to get rid of it, I mean?
I don't think there's a specific timeline. I know this year the LINZ couldn't use herbicide because of the lake's water conditions, so there was a little bit of a setback, I think, this year. So I don't think there's any sort of specific timeline just yet in terms of the current cleanup. I think they are hoping to have that all wrapped up by the end of this week, so fingers crossed.
All right. Matthew, thanks for that update. Matthew Nash, local democracy reporter with us from Rotorua. It is 6 minutes away from 9. Time to talk business now with our partners 2 Degrees. We got a read from the Reserve Bank on the pace of recovery as it cut the OCR to 2.25% yesterday, of course down 0.25%. Earlier I was joined by Garth Bray from Business Desk. Take a look.
Like the house price growth they're talking about, it's very, very sustainable is the new buzzword. Sustainable basically means bugger all.
Yeah, exactly.
It's probably music to the ears of the politicians who don't want to see them take off by too much because that'll leave everybody behind. But for those people who are feeling that that's an important part of how they feel wealthy, that's not a huge news.
So for people at home, Garth, it looks like this is the end of the cutting cycle. Is that a fair thing to say?
There were a lot of questions around that yesterday because obviously there's a fair bit of money out there in terms of the mortgage market that's been sort of sitting on floating rates going, gosh, shall we jump now? Shall we price out longer? I am not qualified to give mortgage broking advice. I would always go and see a professional about that. Might do, actually. But the point is, I suppose, that if those rates, if the easing cycle seems to have stopped, and I think the indication now there's about a 20% chance at this stage that there would be a further cut in February 18 when they come back after the summer break under a new governor. And so that suggests that some of the 40% of mortgages that are probably going to roll over in the next couple of months will be fixing at different rates. And Karen Silk, the Reserve Bank Deputy Governor, was saying basically, look, you've got a great opportunity there, that the margins are back where they should be relative to wholesale rates. So banks they're making a healthy gain on that.
Yes.
Scope, plenty of capacity for a bit of competition. Not a mortgage war, but just a good
healthy dose.
Yeah.
We're speaking to Antonia Watson from Chief Executive at ANZ after 8:30, so we'll ask her about that then.
Yeah.
Now, export prices holding up well. This is what, again, from the Reserve Bank, and we saw that from Fisher & Paykel Healthcare yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, they are our NVIDIA, if you like, one of our huge market darlings, and they cracked $1 billion in revenue for the first half for the first time, which is a great number. I think, what are we talking about, $213 million worth of net profit after tax. It's above guidance, so their full year guidance is lifted again, largely on currency. We've got a very, relatively weak dollar at the moment, although it jumped about 1% yesterday on news that the easing cycle was probably over. So, and interesting, they're not making huge changes based on the tariffs. They've sort of priced that in at about $16 to $17 million worth of impact, and they're just trying to sort of stick to their knitting and continuously improve rather than get too freaked and flaky by changing events.
Now, finally, New Zealand bosses having a crack at airports about giving Jetstar some sweetheart deals?
Yeah, look at Nikhil Ravichandra, the new CEO. He's been in there for 5 weeks. I know you spoke to him earlier in the week. I don't know if he dropped this little bomb in there, but he was talking about...
No, we dropped plenty of other bombs, Garth, but this particular one wasn't dropped.
He's obviously picking his audiences, maybe. So this one is aimed at the airports for offering sort of extended or not time-limited discounts to Jetstar, basically, on landing fees and other kinds of deals. And he's saying, oh, that's, it's fine if you're introducing a new player to a new line or a new market or whatever, but to just sort of offer open-ended discounts, that's outrageous. And we're, we're the national airline, but we're, a commercial airline, but also, part of critical infrastructure, sort of, New Zealand CEOs do sometimes wrap themselves in the flag. And I guess the counter to that's come from the Airports Association saying, come on, this is absurd. We're talking about $10 to $20 on the cost of an airfare. That doesn't justify how you have to pay $1,000 for a return airfare in some cases.
100%.
I guess the point is they are just sort of cherry-picking the main 5-6 routes, your Auckland, Wellington, Hamilton, Dunedin, Queenstown, Christchurch, not the regional routes that Air New Zealand has to cover as well. So a bit of an interesting choice to have a crack at that one.
Because you can see how it would feel unfair to Air New Zealand, because they basically have to pay more on the main trunk lines. Because if I fly now and I'm going Auckland, Wellington, I will more often than not fly Jetstar, because I'm a last-minute booker, and it's an $800 versus a $200 decision.
I mean, a big part of this that they can't control is obviously the engine troubles that they've had that have really slammed them, and that limits their ability to sort of offer more.
That was Garth Bray from Business Desk earlier on the program, thanks to our partners 2 Degrees. Now, a quick bit of breaking news for you this morning. Guinea-Bissau, this is a West African country. The military has taken total control of the borders. This is after days of election chaos. 3 days after both leading presidential candidates claimed victory, army officers have announced this morning that they've suspended the process, the electoral process altogether, and closed all borders.
Instaurado pela alta chefia de diferentes ramos das Forças Armadas, o Alto Comando Militar para a Restauração de Segurança Nacional e Ordem Pública acaba de assumir plenitude dos poderes do Estado da República da Guiné-Bissau.
Gunshots have been heard in the capital, with reports the country's president has been detained. It's the latest in a long history of coups and attempted coups in Guinea-Bissau, which has struggled with political instability since gaining independence from Portugal in 1974. Returning to our developing story this morning, firefighters are still unable to reach residents trapped on higher floors of a burning apartment complex in Hong Kong. The fire has spread across 7 apartment buildings, with flames still visible in 4 of them. At least 36 people have died, with 279 still missing. 700 firefighters have been working at the scene around the clock. The fire spread on bamboo scaffolding. You can see it falling off the building here, and construction netting that had been set up outside for renovation work. 29 people remain hospitalised, with 7 in critical condition. This is according to officials on the ground. The fire is reportedly the deadliest blaze in Hong Kong in 3 decades. Right, for the rest of the morning's headlines, here's Neva.
Herald NOW News, powered by Newstalk ZB.
The Reserve Bank's Assistant Governor says banks could cut interest rates further if they want to. The central bank's dropped the official cash rate 25 basis points to 2.25% in what may be the last cut of the current cycle. Mortgage rates have been falling significantly, and bank markups have returned to normal levels. While most banks have already priced in current OCR cuts, Karen Silk says they could still offer lower rates if they want to. She says margins are healthy, and banks definitely have room to compete for customers. Northland businesses are taking class action against Transpower and its lines maintenance contractor over widespread power outages. In June last year, a pylon fell in Glorit, north of Helensville, cutting power to almost the entire Northland region. An investigation found a relatively inexperienced and inadequately supervised Omexom worker removed nuts from 3 of the pylon's 4 legs. Law firms Lee Salmon Long and Piper Alderman are leading the opt-out class action against the companies, with backing from Omni Bridgeway. Piper Alderman partner Hannah Brown says that this outage was entirely preventable and those responsible should be held to account. The Herald can reveal a group of survivors of torture at Lake Alice Hospital will receive redress payments ranging between $160,000 and $600,000. Last year, a Royal Commission of Inquiry outlined widespread abuse in state and faith-based institutions over 70 years. A newly released report by independent arbiter Paul Davison KC assesses the accounts of 37 survivors. The group has opted for an independent review of their cases rather than immediate $150,000 payment offered by the government. Davison has allocated redress payments based on the relative severity of the torture they experienced. The government's move to inject billions into Auckland's Devonport Naval Base and other defence infrastructure is expected to boost morale in the force. Deputy Chief of Navy Commodore Carl Woodhead says sailors want to know the nation's as committed to them as they are to it. A number of deaths and injuries are being reported in Hong Kong, where a fire's been burning through multiple high-rise apartment buildings. The complex in the Tai Po district is home to thousands of people, many of them elderly. Oyster farmers working the Mahurangi River north of Auckland have been dealt another blow. Last Wednesday, there was a spill from Warkworth's Elizabeth Street overflow point. It follows the largest spill of the year just 3 weeks ago. Mahurangi Oyster Farmers Association President Lynette Dunn says frequent spills this year have damaged their reputation.
Herald Now Sport, brought to you by Gold Sport.
Three-time Swiss Grand Slam singles tennis champion Stan Wawrinka will play next year's ASB Classic for the first time since 2007. South Africa have beaten India by 408 runs on the fifth day of the second cricket test in Guwahati to complete a 2-0 series sweep. Former Black Caps coach John Bracewell believes India is poised to establish global control of T20 franchise leagues in conjunction with the international game because of the entrepreneurs' ability to buy teams as well as players.
Herald Now Weather, brought to you by You Do It Kitchens.
Good morning. A very wet, windy and warm day ahead thanks to a series of fronts moving across the South Island today. Very humid northerlies. Now the heaviest rain is set to continue in the west of the South Island, Westland and the Canterbury headwaters south of Arthur's Pass under an orange heavy rain warning until 1 p.m. An orange strong wind warning remains for the Canterbury High Country and the Plains till 5 p.m. So still some heavy rain around here, but the rain eases back early afternoon. The wind doesn't though, turning west or northwest, not easing till tonight. Wet and windy here, thunderstorms likely too, especially in the west and over the Alps. But from the afternoon, that risk extends out to all of Canterbury and in the north. 30 the high today for some. Mostly cloudy here today with showers turning to rain tonight for Wellington, Kapiti and Taranaki. Could be thundery. It is windy, gusty northerlies for the capital. Hot and dry in the east with northerlies. A heat alert has been issued for Napier. Hastings will warm to 32 degrees. There will be a couple of showers further west. And apart from the odd shower, there will just be cloudy periods for the upper north. Winds are from the north or northwest with a high of 26 degrees for Auckland.
And that is it for us for your Thursday morning. Thanks so much for being with us. We'll be back tomorrow from 7 o'clock. For more news in the meantime, head to nzherald.co.nz. Quick thank you to our partners this morning, Forsyth Bar, You Do It, Barker's, Max, 2 Degrees, DJ Gardner, Dilmar and of course Noel Lemming. Thanks guys. From all the team at Herald Now, thank you for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow.